Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the mind of a pretty unique political figure, Sudhanshu Trivedi. We're going to break down his core arguments about India's history, its connection to science, and what he thinks is the right mindset for the nation.
You've probably seen him in debates. He's got this reputation for being a kind of human Wikipedia, right? He can pull up book titles, page numbers, even specific lines on the spot. But here's the thing. That's just memory. What we really want to know is, what's the big idea holding all that information together? What's the philosophy behind it all?
For Trivedi, it all starts with this idea, which he pulls from the Ramcharitmanas. He basically argues that real knowledge doesn't make you arrogant. Actually, it does the opposite. It makes you realize just how much you don't know. And you really need to get this concept to understand where he's coming from.
So what's the one big argument that connects everything he talks about? Well, it really boils down to this single core idea, that a leftover mindset from the colonial era, what he calls a slavery mentality, is what's holding India back.
Okay, so this term is absolutely crucial to his entire framework. For him, a slavery mentality is when a nation starts to doubt itself, to question its own heritage and its own ancient knowledge. He sees it as this deep psychological barrier that needs to be broken.
So what's the real-world effect of this mentality? Well, according to Trivedi, it's like a form of mental colonization. It conditions people to look at their own heritage and think, oh, that's just mythology. But then they accept Western ideas as pure science, no questions asked. He argues it's time to flip that script.
To make this less abstract, he gives a powerful example, the Kumbh Mela. Think about it. He says that back in 1989, this gigantic festival was barely covered by the media. By 2013, you started to see a change, and today, it's a huge global event. For Trivedi, the festival is the same. What's changed is how India sees itself. He uses this as solid proof that this so-called slavery mentality is starting to break down.
All right, so that brings us to the first major pillar of his argument, taking a hard look at history. He points to the story of Buddhism's decline in India as a classic case of how this slavery mentality has twisted the way the nation sees its own past.
The story we usually hear is that it was because of internal fights, maybe a Hindu resurgence led by people like Adi Shankaracharya. But Trivedi comes in and says, hold on a second, and he poses this question to make us rethink that whole narrative.
And here's where he makes his move. He contrasts that common story with his claim. But, and this is super important, he doesn't just state his own opinion. He directly quotes Dr. B.R. Ambedkar to argue that the real cause for the decline was, in Ambedkar's words, the brutal invasion of Muslims.
Now, to support this claim, he connects the past to what's happening right now. He says, look around the world today. Who's harming Buddhist sites and people? He points to China, to the Taliban in Afghanistan, to attacks on the Bodh Gaya temple. For him, the pattern is clear. The threat has always been from the outside, not from within India. He then adds a fascinating linguistic point, again citing Dr. Ambedkar. He says, the Persian word for idol, but, actually comes from the word Bud. Why? Because when early invaders came, the main people they saw worshiping idols were Buddhists. So, worshiping Bud just became the word for worshiping idols in general.
Okay, let's pivot now to the second big part of Trivedi's worldview. This is where he tries to build a bridge between ancient Indian philosophy and, believe it or not, modern physics.
The core claim here is pretty bold. He's saying that concepts that ancient Indians called philosophy are now being proven true by modern science. But to even see these connections, he argues you first have to get rid of what he calls the mental box of Macaulay and Marx. Basically, the Western-centric education and thinking we've all inherited.
And here's the analogy he uses to make it click. He says, think about it. The idea of the soul being formless in the universe, like a wave, but taking form in a body, like a particle, that was called philosophy. But today, the idea that light is a wave in space, but acts like a particle when it hits something, that's called physics. He's basically asking, are these two ideas really so different?
He expands on this wave idea by connecting it to a fundamental concept in Indian thought, rhythm, or laya. His logic is simple. If the universe is made of waves and vibrations, then it's all based on rhythm. And so, pralaya, the end of the universe, literally means the end of rhythm. It's a way of connecting quantum physics all the way back to Vedic chants.
All right, next up, Trivedi gets into the culture of intellectual debate. He draws a sharp contrast between what he calls the Sanatan Dharma tradition and other systems of belief around the world.
So here's the contrast he lays out. He argues that many belief systems are built around one book, where you can't ask questions, and to argue is a sin. But he claims Sanatan Dharma is totally different. It's not one book, it's a whole library. And it actually encourages a specific kind of logical debate called Shastrarth.
And to back this up, he shares this amazing historical story. There was this legendary debate between two of the greatest male scholars of the time. And who did they choose to be the judge? A woman, Ubaya Bharati. For Trivedi, this is the ultimate proof of a tradition so intellectually open and advanced that it put a woman's mind in the highest seat of judgment.
So we've looked at his views on history, science, and culture. When you put it all together, what's the big message? What is he actually asking people to do? This one quote just nails his entire argument. He's urging people to consciously step outside of the Western frameworks they've been taught. He's saying that it's only when you clear your mind of those influences that you can finally, truly understand your own culture.
In the end, what Trivedi's really calling for is a total shift in mindset. It's about moving from self-doubt to pride. It's about starting to see ancient texts not as fairy tales, but as deep wells of knowledge. And it's about seeing all the different traditions in India not as proof of division, but as different roads leading to the same place.
And that leaves us with this final, really powerful question. Whether you agree with him or not, Trivedi's entire project is based on this one idea, that for centuries, India has been listening to a story told about it by others. His work is an attempt to start telling that story for itself. And the real question is, what happens next? What does that look like, and where does it lead? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.